Hi, my name is Sarah, and welcome to Discover Point Online. We are so glad you were able to connect with us today. We want you to be able to take your next step in your walk with Jesus, no matter what that looks like. As you watch, if you have any questions about today's message, our church, upcoming events, or maybe you have a prayer request, we invite you to send us a message through our website at discoverpointchurch.com/connect. Thank you so much for joining us. Now, here's the message.
Have you ever been stressed, worried, anxious, confused? Maybe all of the above. Are you worried about your next paycheck or your diet? What about your grades? Will they be good enough to get you into that college? Are the deadlines at work piling up? While your marriage is falling apart? Do you feel like a bill is due every day? And with all these repairs, you can never get ahead? Does it seem like the whole world is closing in around you? How can you win the war against worry when you just feel overwhelmed?
Good to see you guys. Thank you guys so much for coming here. Before we start today, I want you, if you don't mind, help me celebrate something. Do you mind doing that? So last week, on a Saturday morning, some of us got together and we just begged God that God would show up in a huge way last Sunday. And 22 people came to Jesus Christ last week. So will you guys celebrate that with me? I am so grateful that I get to be a part of something that God's doing. I'm so grateful for that. Last week, we started a new series called Overwhelmed. How many of y'all have something in your life right now that you are overwhelmed about? Raise your hand if you're overwhelmed, all right? There's no judgment from me to you. For some of you, you're overwhelmed with your relationship with your spouse or maybe your ex-spouse. Some of you, you're overwhelmed with your relationship with your children because they've started back to school, or maybe it's because your children have gone off to school somewhere. The chances are great that you are overwhelmed by a relationship today, and that's why we're talking about what it means to be overwhelmed by relationships and how can you overcome being overwhelmed by relationships, all right? So if you have your note sheet, I want to encourage you to get that out because all of us experience relationships in this life. Every single one of us experience some kind of relationship, and you have one of two choices. They're either going to be healthy relationships or they're going to be unhealthy relationships. Sometimes it can be healthy and unhealthy at the same time. What I mean by that is some of you could be having a relationship with one person that's an extremely healthy relationship. Then on the other hand, you could have a relationship with someone else that's completely unhealthy. So we're going to learn what that means, learn what that looks like, and how to overcome that, all right? So if you have your note sheet again, we're going to answer this question: why are relationships so important? There's 4 reasons, probably more, but I'm going to just give you 4 today because I don't want you to be overwhelmed, okay? Number 1, healthy relationships fulfill the need to be loved. Every single one of us were born with the desire and the need to be loved. Not to just feel like you're loved, but to actually be loved. Every one of us have a desire in our heart to be loved by someone. A healthy relationship, whether that's with your spouse, whether that's with your children, whether that's with someone in your family or someone in your spiritual family, right? You have the opportunity to have that need fulfilled. But let me stop there. Last week, 22 people experienced, right, the greatest relationship that they could ever have, and that's found in Jesus Christ. So last week, 22 people got a need fulfilled, and I want to also go further and just tell you this. Jesus can fulfill every single desire of our heart. He can fulfill every need that He created us with, and I'll even go further and say this. He's the only one that can ever fulfill every need that we have. Because some of you understand that relationships will not always fulfill a need to be loved. That doesn't mean that they won't, but sometimes you're going to get disappointed. Sometimes people are going to leave you. Sometimes people are going to walk away. Sometimes people are going to really damage and really hurt what's going on in your mind or your heart. But I want you to understand, healthy relationships fulfill the need to be loved. Number two is healthy relationships can bring great joy. Did you notice I did not say relationships can bring great joy? Because not all relationships bring joy. Do I hear an amen on that? All right? Are you with me on that? Because some of you are completely overwhelmed in some relationships right now because they are causing a lot of stress, a lot of heartache, and a lot of hurt. Some of you used to have relationships like that, but thankfully, God took that person and took them somewhere else. And He saved you with a lot more heartache, right? And so number three is this: healthy relationships provide a place of impact. I believe with all of my heart that God has purposed your life and created you to have impact in this world, not just to breathe air, not just to kind of go along with life. I believe that He wants to do something huge in your life and then through your life. So there are relationships that are healthy that you can have that both give impact to you. In other words, they're there for you, they hold you accountable, they love you, they encourage you, they do all of those things, right? And then also there's relationships that you have with people that you also invest and impact in their life. I've got people in my life that are extremely important to me because that's the kind of relationship where I impact them and they impact me on a daily basis. It's even more than my blood family. Because I come from a family, my dad's from Pennsylvania, my mom's from the Kentucky area, and so when they kind of came down to Warner Robins, where I'm from, all the families scattered around. You know, I have aunts and uncles that are in the bottom of Florida all the way up to Pennsylvania, and so it's hard for me to do life with them. It's hard for me to have a relationship with them. It doesn't mean that I don't like them, I don't love them, because I do, right? We love blood family. Even though they're crazy sometimes, we still love them, right? But it's the people that I get to interact with on a daily basis. Friends that send me texts just to let me know that they're praying for me. Not that they want something, not to just try to make me feel better about myself or to feel better about them, but I have relationships with people who actually impact me. And so that's what healthy relationships do. Not only do you get impacted, but you impact other people. Number four is this: healthy relationships give you the support that you need. I have been a part of a life group pretty much since we started life groups many years ago at Discover Point Church, right? And this is what I know that's true. There are some of you that have been here since we've opened the doors in this building 4 years ago. There are some of you that have been here since we were over at Parker Road. And there might be a very, very small few that's been with us from the movie theater or Peachtree Academy, and you still have yet to get involved in a life group. And I don't know what excuse you have. Maybe you're busy, which I get. Maybe you already serve, which we appreciate, right? But this is where you find support. Thankfully, we've become a large church, but when you become a large church, you also need to become a smaller church at the same time, because it's impossible for you to do life together in a service like this. An hour, you don't even get to say hey sometimes. Sometimes you get to give each other a high five, but if you're not sitting in the same place or if you're not here but once a month, it's very, very difficult to do that. So today, when you leave here, not only are you going to have the opportunity to go out front and eat some good stuff, right? But before you go outside, you turn to your right and you're going to be able to go in and you're going to be able to see all the different life groups. You'll be able to see it up front and to your left, where you can get involved and be intentional to start some healthy relationships. Now, let me just go ahead and tell you, in life groups, you're going to find some of the greatest people that you've ever met in your life. And you're also going to find some of the strangest people that you've ever met in your life. I'm just being honest. The people that are laughing know, because they're the ones that I'm talking about. You understand what I'm saying? So today, this is what I want you to understand. At the end of your life, relationships will be the only things that really matter. So if you are fortunate enough, now understand that when I say that, if you are fortunate enough to have people around you when you pass, some people, they don't get that opportunity. But if you get the opportunity to have people around you, what you did for a living is not going to matter. How much money you made is not going to matter. It's those people that are standing around you, that love you, that do life with you. Those relationships are what matters the most. So over these 5 weeks, we're talking about, last week we talked about worry and fear. This week we're talking about relationships. Next week we're talking about being overwhelmed by sin, which many of us, all of us have a difficulty with that. The following week we're going to talk about being overwhelmed by finances. And then the last week we're going to talk about what it means to be overwhelmed by work. And so this is what I want you to know. I feel like today is the most important one because relationships mean so much to every single one of us. So this is the question that we're going to answer today. 5 ways to overlook or overcome being overwhelmed by relationships. Again, there's probably 10, 15, or 20 of these, but I don't want you to be overwhelmed today, all right? So I'm going to give you 5 things that I believe will help you overcome being overwhelmed by relationships, all right? Number 1 is this. You need to learn to communicate better. How many of y'all know someone that you're in a relationship with that they need to learn how to communicate better? Raise your hand. If you're in a relationship with somebody that needs to learn how to communicate better, chances are it's you that raised your hand, all right? This coming up June, if God allows me, June 19th, my wife and I will celebrate 20 years of marriage. And I am so grateful. Amen. That's more for her than for me. I get that, right? Because anybody that could hang out with me for that long, it deserves, she should have a Catholic church named after her, right? Saint Angela or something like that. But in 20 years, this is what I know. We still have a long way to go in the area of communication. We communicate in different ways. She can say this, and I believe it means this, and then sometimes I get it wrong. And instead of her maybe giving me a little bit more description, then I fail and I'm in trouble. Anybody know what I'm talking about, right? And it's like a vicious cycle both ways. Sometimes, not often, but sometimes she'll say, hey, can you pick this up for me at the store? And I'll pick up guys, you know what I'm talking about, right? I'll pick up exactly what she says. Like the label even says what she said. I did that one time. I went and got 2 things, and I nailed it. Husband, you ever felt like when you walked in, like you walking in on a throne and there needs to be praise and worship? You know what I'm talking about, right? And I walked in, and I put these things on the counter, and I went to walk away thinking, number 1, I was going to get a hug, no hug. But I put them down on the counter, and I turned my back to walk into the living room, and before I even got to the living room, why did you get this? Because that's what you asked for. That's not what I asked for. I didn't want it in powder. I wanted it in liquid. Babe, you didn't say you wanted it in a liquid. You just said you wanted this. Anybody know what I'm talking about? Communication is something that we need to do better. And I need to hurry up before I get in trouble with what I'm talking about, all right? Listen to this verse right here. May the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be pleasing to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. How many of y'all know that usually what comes out of your mouth is usually what's represented right here in your heart? And so if you go home with an attitude, if you're mad at your spouse or you're mad at your children and you're mad at them because you haven't done something that's very important in resolving conflict, if that's going on, you're usually not going to say edifying and encouraging things. And so think about what relationship you have right now in your life, that if you would just learn to communicate better, again, don't be concerned about them as much because you can't control them, but you can communicate with them on how to communicate better with you. Just think for a second what would happen to that relationship. Would it be as overwhelming to you if you would just learn how to communicate to them and teach them how to communicate to you? Look, listen to this verse, Proverbs 17:27. A truly wise person uses few words. That takes a lot of us right out of that wise section, right? A person with understanding is even-tempered. Many of us can use a lot more wisdom in our life, but this is the problem. Many of us, I'm going to say it, will not shut up long enough to become wise. And so in communication, I remember for so much of my marriage, being as an insecure man as I was, trying to lead a home in an insecure place, there would be times where I just wanted to win an argument. And so I would talk faster and louder. None of the communication made sense, but sometimes it stopped it. I felt like I won. So of course I would walk around all proud for a couple days. That doesn't get us anywhere in relationships. It overwhelms relationships. And so what we need to learn to do is not use as many words, right? And to become wise. Listen to this verse. Some people make cutting remarks, but the words of the wise bring healing. This is the problem with so many of our relationships. We're speaking death to people and not bringing healing to people. Man, I see that all the time on Facebook. I see that all the time on social media. I see that so much in the political system today and how we communicate about our differences. All we want to do is call people dumb. All we want to do is call people stupid. We don't want to hear people. All we want to do is win arguments, make points, instead of making a difference. James 1:19 says, understand this, my brothers and sisters, you must all be quick to what? Listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. A lot of our communication style is this. We listen to somebody long enough to make sure we know what we're going to say when it comes to our turn to talk. Sometimes we shut them up because we just want to be heard. We don't want to hear somebody because that might make us feel uncomfortable. They might make a point that we don't know what to say to. But James said it this way. You must all be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to get angry. Number 2 is this. We need to learn to resolve conflict. Some of y'all left a relationship years ago because that was the easy thing to do. Because you didn't want to have a tough conversation. Because you felt like maybe you didn't do anything wrong, or you felt like that person did not deserve forgiveness or an opportunity to resolve conflict. And some of you are just like, they're just like everybody else. They don't listen to me. And just think for a second, what would happen if people in the church, I'm not even talking about lost people, heathens in the community, I'm talking about people in the church, if we would learn just to resolve conflict. In other words, just have some uncomfortable conversations. Having hard conversations will help every relationship that you have. So let's start with probably one of the most important relationships, and that is with your spouse. Some of you, and this is no judgment, I'm just saying this as reality. Some of you, the first one broke down. You didn't know how to communicate. You didn't resolve conflict. So the easy thing was to be, we just have differences, and so we don't need to be married anymore. And you walked away from that relationship, and this is what you're going to find out. If you do not learn that you are a part of the communication and a part of the problem as far as resolving conflict, and then you just think that somebody else is just going to magically make it all better, you're going to go through another relationship, and you're going to be hurt again because you will not take the time to work on you. Man, over the last several years, I've been trying to be as intentional as I possibly can, not just making my relationships healthier, but by making me healthier. Because if I am a healthy leader, or if I am a healthy husband, or if I am a healthy parent, it will be much easier to have a healthy relationship. Does that make sense? So I've got to make sure that I am spending time with my Maker, my Creator, listening to Him tell me what my faults are because He loves me, not because He wants to condemn me, but because He knows what's best for me. So I need to spend time with that relationship, which is the most important, so that my other relationships can be healthier. And so I need to understand that hard conversations are extremely needed in our lives. Listen to Romans 12, 17 and 18. Never pay back evil with more evil. Do things in such a way that everyone can see you are what? Honorable. Do all that you can to live in peace with what? Everyone. Could you imagine if Christians would live by this verse alone? I mean, man, churches are filled with some of the meanest people I have ever met in my life. I'm serious. Some of you know what I'm talking about, right? You've been in church long enough to know that Christians can be some of the meanest people. But this is the problem. We need to get to the place where we're okay not being right all the time and just loving people and living in peace with everyone. And you know what that means? Sometimes it means you have to have tough discussions. If I'm in the office one day and I go by Brad's office, Brad and I share kind of an area, and so I'm over here, Brad's over here, and if I walk by him and I don't say anything, that might hurt his feelings. It wouldn't hurt Brad's feelings. Brad can't get his feelings hurt, but I'm just talking about Moses. I'm just kidding, right? I just hurt his feelings. I'll learn about that tomorrow. So sometimes if I do that, and maybe he'll say good morning, and I'll say good morning, maybe it's because somebody had just told me that their wife cheated on them on the phone, and I'm just kind of still dissecting that in my mind. It's not because I wanted to be rude to Brad, but I had something on my heart. And sometimes that happens. And if you're not willing to just have a tough, hey man, everything okay? Everything going okay? That's what happens with so many marriages and so many relationships. We complete our perspective of a situation, our perception of a situation is completely wrong. But instead of dealing with it, we learn a year from there or 2 years how offended and how mad somebody is, and that relationship has been affected for such a long time. Ephesians 4:26, Paul says, and don't sin by letting anger control you. Don't let the sun go down while you are still angry. This is a problem. The enemy wants to get a foothold. He wants to get in the door of your relationship. And if you're not willing to resolve conflict, the enemy will get in your mind and tell you all kinds of craziness. But this is the problem. A lot of us want to talk and gossip. We want to tell other people how bad somebody is instead of just simply resolving conflict. Because can I tell you something? That's exactly the way that God wants us to be handled. He wants us to have conversations so that we can come to a resolution. The enemy does not want that. And so the enemy wants to keep you at a place in your relationships where you're not communicating well and you're not resolving conflict. And he'll get you in your feelings. The enemy's good at that. And he'll tell you that you deserve better. Then you'll be on Facebook and you'll remember this person from the past, and you'll think to yourself, this is what the enemy will say, if you could be with that person, all of your problems would go away. Because that person right there communicates so much better than the one you have. And I could go on and on and on. Learn to resolve conflict. Proverbs 14:29. People with understanding control their anger. A hot temper shows great foolishness. Number 3 is this. Start to forgive. I could talk about forgiveness probably for 2 or 3 weeks, probably more than that. And so I don't have a lot of time to go into this. But some of you are overwhelmed in your relationships. Listen to me. I want you to get this. Some of you are overwhelmed in your current relationships that you are in because you have not forgiven past relationships that you've left. And your relationships are going to suffer from now until you die, until you are willing to start the process of forgiving someone who has damaged you and hurt you. Some of you, let me just say this. Some of you, every single day you're waking up and you are hurt, and you're feeling defeated, all spiritually and emotionally and physically, and you are the one that you are hurting worst by not forgiving. Because that person that hurt you, number one, might not have even realized they hurt you. They might not even have meant it the way that you took it. Do you understand what I'm saying? And some of those people really don't even care. So why are you going to be a prisoner of that person's chaos? Start the process of forgiving. You say, Pastor, that's impossible because that person doesn't deserve forgiveness. Let me remind you of something. you don't deserve it either. How many of y'all have ever done something wrong in your life where you wanted someone to forgive you? Would you be honest and vulnerable? Like, is there nobody that does anything wrong in this life? Okay, all right. There's been plenty of times when I have needed somebody to forgive me. Why is it so difficult for me to forgive? Why? Listen to this verse right here, Colossians 3. Make allowance for each other's faults and forgive anyone who offends you. Remember, the Lord forgave you, so you must. It doesn't say you can if you want to. You can if that person deserves it. You can if that person has come to you and begged and begged and begged. No. Paul says, so you must forgive others. Ephesians 4:31 and 32. And I want to encourage you, if you have room on a paper, write this down because this is so good. We need to learn it. We need to live it. We need to memorize it. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, as well as all types of evil behavior. Instead, be kind to each other, tenderhearted, forgiving one another, just as God, through Christ, has forgiven you. It is so important, guys. It is so important that you learn the process of forgiveness and you start it. Because some of you, you're going to live in the past all your life if you don't deal with this. And I would say that you need to start forgiveness, and this is going to sound contradictory a little bit, right? As we go into number 4, but I want you to get it and I want you to understand this. Number 4 is this: you need to learn the gift of goodbye. Some of you, listen to me, some of you need to be grateful to God for the person that left years ago. Did you hear what I said? Some of y'all need to get through it. I understand you deal with the hurt, you deal with the pain, but some of you need to praise God because God saved you a lot more heartache. It's just true. There are some people that you need to forgive. That doesn't mean that you need to have a relationship with them because they're unsafe people. Some of you that have been abused physically, some of you that have been abused sexually, some of you that have been abused verbally, you can start the process of forgiving that person, but that does not mean that you need to have a relationship with them. Now, I know that some of y'all like, Pastor, you don't understand, the person that I need to forgive, I live with. I understand. I'm not talking about marriage. I'm not telling you that if one of your spouse doesn't communicate well or they don't handle conflict well, I'm not telling you that God says that you need to say goodbye to them, because that's not it at all. But some of us need to understand that there are people, and this is on the notes right here, understand that some people are not meant to be a part of your story forever. And guess what? That's okay. It doesn't mean that you're a bad person. It doesn't mean that they're a bad person. It doesn't mean that you have to be mean or rude or cruel to that person. It just simply means that time in your life with them being a part of your story, it's just over. It's just over. It happened in the scriptures. In Acts, I believe it was chapter 15, there was a sharp disagreement between two leaders of the church that loved Jesus probably equally. But what happened? They parted company. It didn't mean that one of them was bad and the other one was good. It didn't mean that one was right and one was wrong. It just simply meant that now, because that part of the story is over, now two can go that way and two can go this way, and God can still get the glory from it. There are some people that have been a part of chapter 2 and chapter 3 of your story, but they're not meant for chapter 4. That's okay. Celebrate, brush yourself off, and keep walking. Do not try to manipulate that person. Do not try to guilt that person into coming back in a relationship with you when you don't need them and they don't need you. Does that make sense what I'm saying? I'm not saying that if anybody ever hurt you that you need to not do relationship with them anymore, because that's not resolving conflict. So I want you to hear what I'm saying. There are some of you that have been hurt in your past because somebody left. Deal with the hurt of it. Brush yourself off and keep moving toward other relationships that God has for this season of life, because it's so very important. And then number 5 is this: we've got to stop comparing ourselves to others. I say that so often. So back before social media and before all of those things, a group of people usually would have maybe 50 to 100 people in their life that influence them. They influence them. It's kind of the circle of influence, right? But now some people have thousands of people in their circle, or at least they think they do. I mean, I've got like almost 4,000 friends on Facebook, but I really don't have 4,000 friends. I have 4,000 people that know me or that I know them. And I could honestly go through my Facebook list, right? I could go through my Facebook list, all 30, whatever, 100 of them, and I could probably tell you where I knew them from. That's just how my mind works. I don't understand that, but that doesn't mean that we do life together. That means that they get to see the good side that I want them to see on social media. You understand what I'm saying? I mean, I'm not one that usually will go on social media and air out my craziness. Some of y'all, though, do that. Y'all hear what I'm talking about? Sometimes I'm laying in the bed with Angela, and we're just looking through Facebook, and I'm like, Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. I'm thinking, Lord, why did you call me to this crazy church to pastor these crazy people, right? I mean, I'm thankful, well, yeah, I have seen some crazy posts about me, but I'm just saying for the most part, they're just about what's going on with you, right? This is the problem. So many of us live in the place of our life where we compare constantly with other people. But the problem is you're only comparing yourself to what they want you to see. You don't really understand what's going on in their life. Man, you look at your girlfriend and you're like, man, I wish I had a husband like hers because he treats her really, really good. You don't know all the craziness that goes on in that home. You don't know that he lied to her last night from his Facebook. Now, you might know that from her Facebook, but you don't know that from his Facebook. You only see the good things, usually, and that's the problem. You're comparing yourself. And I wish I had that house. You don't realize the debt that they have and the debt that's overwhelming them because of a bad choice that they made. I wish I had that car. No, you don't. Did you know that car was in the shop 3 days this week? You don't know those things. This is what I want you to hear. Stop living for other people and start living to please God. Listen to these two verses right here. I love them. Verses 4 and 5 of Galatians 6. Pay careful attention to your own work. Remember, God's provided you with what you have. He's provided your abilities. He's provided your job. He's provided all of those things, all right? So pay careful attention to your own work, for then you will get the satisfaction of a job well done, and you won't need to compare yourself to anyone else, for we are each responsible for our own conduct. Now listen to this verse. Obviously, I'm not trying to win the approval of people, but of God. If pleasing people were my goal, I would not be Christ's servant. I spent most of my life in ministry trying to please other people. And let me tell you why it always leads to a destructive dead end. Because what pleases the person in the middle of the third row here makes this person over here mad. And what makes this person over here halfway back in this section mad, it makes this person over here smile. What makes one of my kids happy makes the other kid mad. And so if I spend all of my energy and all of my time and all of my effort trying to please other people, I will always be overwhelmed in anything that happens in life. And so let me tell you what I want you to do as you leave here. I want you to make a decision and be intentional. Look at all of your relationships and answer this question. What can you do? What needs to be done to overcome being overwhelmed? In your marriage, do you need to leave here today as a couple and say, hey, how can we make this better? Like, what do we need? Do we need to learn how to communicate? This is the problem with most marriages, right? It's not my issue, it's his issue. It's not my issue, it's her issue. If she would just start doing this, or if he would just start doing this, everything would be okay. Stop living in a life of delusion. We both have issues. So how can we learn to communicate better? How can we resolve conflict? For some of you ladies, it means that you need to tell your husband when he upsets you. For some of you men, you need to learn to verbalize your feeling. Well, she'll just cast me down and she'll get mad at me. That's all right. You have your yeses and you have your nos just like she does. It's not a one-side control all in marriage. If it is, it's unhealthy. Does that make sense? Who do you need to start forgiving? Who do you need to thank God that they are no longer a part of your story? They might become a part of your story in chapter 7 or 8, but they're not now. So who do you need to move on from? And let's be honest, some of you need to move on from some of your friends because they're not healthy. I didn't say they were horrible people. They're just not healthy for you where you're at in life. And then who do you need to stop comparing yourself to?
We hope this message connected with you today. If so, we want to help you take a next step by answering any questions you may have or by praying for you today. Let us know how we can help by sending us a message through our website at discoverpointchurch.com/connect. If you would like to help support the ministry of Discover Point, you can give online at discoverpointchurch.com/give. Be sure to stay connected with us through social media to stay up to date with everything going on here at Discover Point. We hope you have a great day.